Hello, everybody. This is Han Vivian again, and thank you so much for listening to our show today. Today, our special guest is Professor S, and thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today and giving us your, story about your path, your passions, your work, and your experiences, motivations. And I wish everybody is having a bit of time listening to the story, and you will find very, very valuable, key takeaway, a lot of things to reflect, and that's going to help our life to improve every day. So, Professor Ed, would you please give our honors to listen to your story, and please bring us back all the way, the journey, how you started all the great work.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you to all of the people that are listening to me and seeing me. It's an honor and privilege to be with you. And well, if you go back and look at how I became who I am, we have to start it as a pretty early age. My parents I was raised in a small town in rural Georgia, which is in the south of the United States. My father was a refugee. He was able to get out of Germany in World War II, and he came to this United States. The rest of his family died in Germany in the war. And he ended up in rural Georgia. My mother was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and so she came to the South. And in the United States, people in the North were called Yankees, and they didn't fit. So my mother was a Yankee, and my father was an immigrant. And they ended up in a very small town in rural Georgia, as being merchants. And we were outsiders, all right? We were outsiders. And things were, hard. And that was during the time when there was lots of demonstrations and lots of stress. It was the years where segregation in the United States and desegregation were being debated, and so they were in the United States. There's conservative groups, and those groups harassed my father and mother and tried to run people out of their stores and etc. And did stop and pull us out of the car and search us. And so it was a very tough environment. But all through that, my mother did something that was very, very important. We were poor. She saved up money, and once every 3 months, she took me and my brother to the bookstore, and she bought us books. And so books and reading was how a youngster like me basically got to live in the big world. And I read about, great doctors and great politicians and great sports heroes. And I would lay in my bed and everything and dream that someday I would be able to leave here and go out in the world, all right? And books were sort of, they gave me that hope. And when I was growing up, my father taught me how to be courageous and to basically be willing to go try things. And that so long as you learn when you try, you don't have to get everything perfect. And the thing that changed my life in rural Georgia, in the South, football is king. High school football is king. College football is king, okay? Well, I was getting ready to go into the 8th grade, and the head football coach, who was a legend in the entire state, I didn't know him. He called me, and he said, "You're starting the 8th grade." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Would you like to be an athletic trainer?" I said, "What is an athletic trainer?" He says, "I'll teach you how to tape ankles and how to put bandages on the players and, and how to basically help them be in strength." And I said, "I guess so." And he said, "Okay, what I would like for you to do on the first day of school is to come to my house at 7:30, and you're going to ride to school with me. And for 5 years, every day I rode to school with the most powerful man in my part of the state. And what he did was, some reason, I don't know how, he saw something in me, or he saw something with my family, and it was like he put his hand on our head and said, these people are okay. They are me. And all of a sudden, everything changed. And that was the goodness of that man's heart, who I didn't know. And so as I look back on my life, other people have been so influential in my life. I've had 20 angels, what I call human angels, who have basically helped me get from, if you will, age 13 to age 74. All right, so 60 years. And so my story is one of learning how to go into the unknown and figure things out. My story is I've had 4 careers, all right? Only one of them I was trained for, all right? Only one of them I was trained for. The other thing that my father taught me was to have courage and to stand up for myself. But with courage, what he meant was have the courage to ask, courage to go into the unknown. And all through my life, that has helped me. So I went off from high school. I did very well in my grades in high school, and because of the coach helped me get a scholarship, full athletic scholarship at the University of Florida, because I was a trainer and I would tape ankles. And so I went to school to tape ankles, all right? And that changed, asked me to become a data analytics person. So we did not have computers, and I spent 50 hours a week doing data analytics on the football team year round, and that paid my way through school. And I was fortunate to graduate with good grades. But there's another example, and I'm not bragging, I'm just sharing to people that it's possible to do these things, okay? Don't be afraid, try. I am in the spring of 1968 was a very turbulent time in the United States. Martin Luther King was assassinated. In June of that year, Senator Robert Kennedy was assassinated. Well, I had the good fortune of meeting Senator Kennedy in the spring of that year, and one of people spending some time with him, and that man captured my heart. And I said, I was all ready to leave undergraduate school and go to the psychology school, get a PhD. And I said, well, I've got to go be a lawyer. Well, the unfortunate thing is that it was April and law school started in September, and all of the law schools had filled out their everyone had already applied to take the law boards. Everybody was in. So, and this is just an example of a behavior that I learned to do. I sat back and said, well, Bobby Kennedy went to the University of Virginia Law School just like his brother Ted Kennedy. I want to go to Virginia Law School. And so one day in April, I picked up the phone on a Friday afternoon and I called the law school, and the secretary answered, and I said, I'd like to speak to the dean. And she said, who are you? I said, I'm Ed Hess. And what are you calling for? I want to come to law school in September. And she said, did you apply? I said, no. She said, have you taken the law boards? I said, no. She says, well, you can't come. I says, well, I really would like to talk to the dean because I think I have a reason to come. She says, well, let me talk to him. And so the dean comes on, and we speak 45 minutes. At the end of the 45 minutes, he says, young man, I'll see you in September. I said, do I have to fill out the application? He said, I'm the dean. I just accepted you. I said, do I need the law boards? He says, what do you don't understand? I'm the dean. I just accepted you. I says, thank you so much. But it's that having the courage to go out there for people to try, to ask. All they can say is no, all right? And the story gets even a little better. And again, this is not about me and ego. This is just about a human being just trying to find the purpose in life and trying to add value. And probably some people, when they hear my story, it's a good thing that you are not that smart, because anybody smart would never do what you're doing, okay? Because they'd feel afraid that they would be rejected and not look bad. And my answer to that is, if you ask and they say no, what's the downside? Because if you didn't ask, it was no, right?
Yep.
If you didn't ask, you had no chance. So if you asked, you got a chance. When I went to law school, as I said before, I came from a very poor family, poor, humble background. And coat and tie was required at the University Law School. Well, I didn't own a coat, okay? I didn't own a coat. And so they drove into Atlanta, 60 miles away. They saved up their money, and they went to a men's store and said, what's a nice suit for our son? They gave them a name, and they said, how much does it cost? And the number was just crazy. My parents then went to the side and talked to each other. Okay, we want to buy him one suit. So they bought me one suit, and I went to law school with one suit. But he had to wear a coat and tie every day, and we went to school 6 days a week. That suit was a heavy suit because they bought me a suit that would work in the fall and the winter. All right? After about 2 months, I was wearing the same suit every day because we went to school on Saturday. They couldn't get it dry cleaned. And people started asking me, why do you wear the same suit? And then people started avoiding me. You know, I don't know whether the suit smelled or what, okay? But I said, wait a minute, this is embarrassing. I'm the only kid here with one coat. This is embarrassing. So I went to see the dean. And the secretary said, he's busy. What do you want to talk to him about? I says, I want to talk to him about discrimination. The dean was a constitutional law scholar. And she said, wait a minute. And she came back and said, he says, come by Friday afternoon. So I go by Friday afternoon. And I go into his office. He says, son, I hear you want to talk about discrimination. What do you want to talk about? I said, sir, with all due respect, you're discriminating against me. I'm a poor kid, and I have to wear one suit, one coat every day. And people now are making fun of me, and it doesn't feel good. And so we talked for a little while, and he said, come back and see me Monday. So Monday I'm walking to school, and I notice students are all up outside the building, and it's very weird, because usually you just walk in. I said, what's going on? He said, there's some announcement. People are going by the dean's office and reading. But 20 minutes later, I get by the dean's office and I read. And it's on his door was a picture frame with the note down it. It said, effective today, coat and tie is no longer required at this law school.
Wow.
And that was like decades of tradition. People were saying, this is crazy. What happened? What's going on here? And I never told anybody back then what I did, okay? But the purpose of this story is to say that you can stand up for yourself. You can ask people. You can basically challenge the status quo. But it's also about, if you ask me a question, why, and I have been, and I'm not, this is not ego, I've been fortunate because I had so many people to help me, but I have lived a life that is a dream life compared to what I could have lived. And why is that? Because I figured out that I was really good at going into the unknown and figuring stuff out. And so, I had very senior jobs on Wall Street, and I didn't know how to do an internal rate of return. In fact, when I got offered the big job, I told the chairman, I said, I don't know how to do it. And he wanted me to be in charge of financial, raising IPO money and stuff like that. I said, I don't know how to do an internal rate of return. He said, I know, because I worked with him previously. I know you. You'll have it figured out by Saturday. And so it's this ability to learn and adapt, but also to know what you don't know. All right? And also not to be afraid to ask. All right? And not to be afraid to ask for help and to be honest. Because the world we're living in today, all of us, no matter where in the world, okay, your viewers live, okay, Vietnam or wherever, we are living in a time where the pace of change is going to get faster and faster because technology is going to drive that change. And we are going to have meaningful work and a meaningful life if we can basically figure out how we can continually add value and not compete with the technology. How do we stay ahead with technology? I tell people their biggest competition going forward is not other people. It's yourself. Because technology is going to demand that we take ownership of ourselves and basically overcome and manage what's going on, our ego, our mind, our heart, our body, our behaviors, manage ourselves so that in ways we can become people who learn, unlearn, and relearn at the speed of change. In order to do that, can't identify ourselves by what we know. We have to basically identify ourselves with how we learn. How we learn. Okay? Which means quiet ego, quiet mind, quiet body. Okay? Learn how to generate positive emotions, how to manage negative emotions. And all of this is based on the great philosophies of the world, which go back thousands of years. You know this. You're in the part of the world where the Eastern philosophies were created. The Western philosophies, when you study the Western philosophies, you'll find they use different words, but they get to the same perspective that the Eastern philosophies do. It's all pretty simple. We've got to take ownership of ourselves and manage ourselves. And the new story going forward for all of us is impermanence. Permanence. Nothing stays the same. Technology is going to drive it. There will be more pandemics in the future. Okay.
Yes.
There will be uproars in the world. Okay. And how we deal with that, and how we deal with it, and how we deal with others will determine, quote, whether we have a meaningful life, which means meaningful relationships and meaningful work. And notice I put meaningful relationships first and meaningful work second, because most of the time meaningful relationships are how you get meaningful work. That's the story of my life. That's the story of my life. And I think that unfortunately, at least in the United States, our education system has not been designed to basically help people learn to have skills that they're going to need in this age we're in, right? And in other parts of the world, they're further along. But people are going to have work in the digital age if they can basically do things technology can't do. That's either think differently than the technology, and the most important differentiator is be able to emotionally connect in positive ways with other human beings. Jobs that relate that. And so service jobs are going to be, that's where humans will ultimately excel. And so how do I myself, what do I do? How do I learn how, generate positive emotions? How do I learn how to manage negative emotions? How do I take control of what's going on inside of me so I can be more adaptable, so I can behave in the right ways? And, yes, I teach in a business school. This is not stuff that generally is taught in the world. And that's what basically the last 20 years, I've had 4 careers in my life, only one career that I was trained for. All right. And the last 20 years that I've spent in academia, I have focused on, because I've been trained in psychology, focused on understanding how high organizational performance results and high personal performance. What does it take? And that's heavily psychology oriented. All right. It's sort of like I went from psychology to business to psychology to business, and all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, this is crazy. Why don't I wrap it all together? Put it up and do. And so that's been an overview of the journey. It's a journey and I think the most important thing for me to stress is the fact that, 3 times in my life I had major transitions that other people helped me through, and I wouldn't have gotten through them without them. And there's been 20 other people that I call human angels that in my life, they basically saw something, felt something, but they were there for me to help me. Okay? And it's my first job I had at age 23 was a big public company in New York City. I graduated from law school. And my first day, they told me that I was going to be put on this project, which was a big project, and that I needed to walk 3 blocks down to the other building and go meet this person. He was going to be my boss. And I'm telling this story for a purpose. And I go in, there and wait. He goes in his office. He doesn't get up and open the door. He yells, "Come on in." And I open the door, and he says, "Shut the door." And before I sit down, he said, "One thing I want you to understand. What did you just do?" I says, "I shut the door." He says, "Good, because leave your emotions outside. Never bring your emotions to work." Wow. And that was something which at age 23 I was taught, in which for 10 years I did, and that's when I hit the biggest wall that knocked me over. All right, and I learned that emotions are in the workplace, should be in the workplace. Emotions are what really makes us human. Emotions is what's going to make us different than a smart machine or a smart robot. All right, emotions are going to what make humans different. But we sat down and told me what the assignment was. It was a big assignment. And he said, "I got a question to ask, because it's very important to me that we act ethically." I said, "Good." He says, "No, that's not what I want from you." He said, "I need to know from you right now if you're going to basically, if you get pressured, are you going to lie, cheat, or steal?" And I went back like this. I mean, nobody ever asked me. I just got back in my chair. I said, "This guy's crazy. Okay, what does he think?" And I said, "Why do you ask the question?" He says, "Because if you going to lie, cheat, or steal," he says, "I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call and get you a job that you're going to make $1 million a year working 1 day a year. And then you can go do that, because I don't want anyone lying, cheating, or stealing from me." And I'm 23 years old. I'm green as grass. Okay. Here's this guy saying, "What? I'm going to pick up the phone and you get a job and you work one day a year for $1 million. And so I stupidly say, not that I wanted the job, I said, what kind of job is like that? He says, you're going to become a hitman. I said, a hitman? He says, yeah, you're going to be a hitman. I said, oh, thank you. And I walked out of there. And when I walked out of his office, my knees were hitting each other like this. Like, that was the weirdest thing. But what was he doing? He was saying to me, if you're working for me, I want honesty, truth, okay? And don't cheat, lie, or steal. And, if you look at life and everything and treat others in ways that you would like to be treated with respect and dignity. Well, the rules of life and the rules of what happiness is, the science of happiness, all fit together. All right? All fit together. All right? Happiness comes when you take the learnings of the great philosophies and the great religions and achieve inner peace. And then happiness comes with otherness, having meaningful relationships and meaningful work. And so everything in life, for thousands of years, the answer is, how can we be successful? How can the people that you're serving be successful? The answers are there. It's just that it takes work. We have to do the work on ourselves and become the type of person that's going to be adaptable, the type of person that's going to have meaningful work, the type of person that's going to have meaningful relationships. And the meaningful relationships and the adaptation and everything is more than just having, I'm good at doing X. It's the emotional side of what we bring to the table emotionally and how we manage our emotions and our behaviors. And how do we behave in ways? How do we behave in ways which sends the message to other people that I value you as a human being? How do we behave in ways to overcome what's called in our brain, our wiring? I mean, we are not wired to be good learners. Okay? Every person our age goes out in the world, and this is how we're wired. We go out to seek confirmation of what we believe. Affirmation of our ego. Pat on the head. You're a good boy, Ed. You're a good boy. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay? Affirmation, confirmation, affirmation, and cohesiveness of the stories in our mind. Our brain is very small, but has huge power. And our brain's drive is to be efficient. And that's why we are wired not to be great learners. We're wired to be great confirmers, affirmers, and keep it the same. And so that's why people are going to have to, in this new modern era, learn how to adapt. Okay? Well, what behaviors and what mindsets will help me become a more flexible learner? Because most people are going to have 5 or 6 different jobs in the rest of their life. The day of one job is over in most cases, right? You got to adapt. And so I've spent my life the last 20 years studying all of that, writing about all of that, consulting about all of that. And that's what's got me to do, okay? Is to how do we achieve inner peace and otherness so we can have meaningful work.
Edward, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would like to ask you this question, because your life is going to the widening the unknown and to to find out the answer, right? And then this ad that we're talking today is not the same ad when he was a lawyer working for corporate. So you went, there was a period of time in your life that you have to go out, go out into the unknown again to save, to save your relations, to change, and then decided to change to a career and make a phenomenon career in academia. And I think that is amazing. That we would really like to hear it from you. The day that you went out for the meeting and you got home and just
Yeah,
yeah.
sure,
Can you
sure,
tell
sure.
us about that moment? Because that we only see it in movie, and then now we want to see it in the real person, the real
Yes,
ad. Yes.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Um, yes. And that was the big transformation in me in my life. That was the big, to say it was a tipping point is small. That was, I mean, I hit a gigantic wall. It was like, boom. I would have been, I was very successful. And that's not bragging, it's just a fact, all right? I'd been on Wall Street, etc. Um, I was a human thinking machine. I was a work machine. Uh, I was driven to be successful, to make my parents proud of me, to etc. I didn't compete against anybody. I didn't do anybody. I never did any harm. I just was, and I was very good in like this going into the unknown and figuring stuff out. And that's what made me so successful. All right. Well, one morning we were living in Washington D.C. One morning I came down for breakfast, and my wife is also a wonderful person, very smart. She has better degrees than me, multiple degrees, and she's a scientist. And so she has her work life, and we came down for breakfast. And during breakfast, she says, "We need to talk." I said, "Okay, talk." She says, "You're not the person I married. You're not here when you're here. You are consumed with your work. You're not emotionally connecting with me or our daughter. This is not working for me." And I was saying to myself, "Oh my goodness, this is serious." And now this is the most embarrassing thing I have ever had. I ever say it's the most embarrassing thing probably I've ever done. And it doesn't feel good even now, many years later, just to say it. Unbelievably, this is what I said. I said, "I hear you. This is something we should talk about. But I have a very important meeting I need to go to. Can we talk about it tonight?" And she looked at me and she said, "Okay." She said it about like that, okay. And so I go to work. I come home that night, and on the dining room table is a note. "We've moved out. I need a break. You need to get yourself together." And I said, "What?" Because, I had her phone number, of course, but didn't have me. And she moved out. And that was really just, floored me, so to speak. Floored me. So I said, I got to find a counselor. And so, I had knew lots of people, so I started doing the research. And they said, "What kind of counselor?" I said, I need a counselor that knows, understands, men, understands business world, understands my life, that understands that, I don't know how to do anything to fix this. And so there was a woman, the first woman who graduated in her class at Columbia University Medical School, who was I found, many people told me, was a great executive coach and counselor. She was a PhD in psychology. And so I, found her. But before I found her, the second thing happened to me. My brother, who was a very, very good cardiologist, we had created a business and built a car dealership that was very nice and everything, cost a lot of money, that basically would only sell used cars. And that was on the forefront of the United States. So while I'm home, this is going on about 4 days after my wife left me, he called and said, "Brother?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We got a problem." I said, "What?" He said, "There's been an embezzlement at the dealership." He says, "Okay, how much?" He said, $1 million. I said, "What?" He said, "I need $500,000 from you by the weekend. We have to pay the bank back." I said, "Oh, okay, whoa." And I put the phone down, and all of a sudden it hit me. My marriage was almost over. I just had my first big financial disaster. And for the first time, I actually fell to my knees on the floor and started crying. It's the first time in my life I cried. I mean, when I used to, get hurt, I never cried. When my brother would tell my mother I was beating on him and she would hit me with a belt, I never cried. And I never beat on him. Okay, he was a liar back then. But the fact is that, so here it was. It was number 2. So basically, I took the first jab. And then there was a second jab. And then before I found my counselor, there was a third jab. I was in the final 2 people to become the CEO of a big company that I really wanted that job. I was in the final 2. And so the consultant who was was with Russell Reynolds Company, one of the big firms in the United States. He called me up and said, "Let's have lunch. I want to talk to you about the job." And I mean, a big smile went on my face. This guy's inviting me out to lunch. I'm in the final 2. He's not inviting me out to lunch to tell me I lost. Because that'd be a short conversation, right? I've got it. So all of a sudden I was feeling like I'm back in the game. So I go to lunch. And he talks and he says, "Reading any books lately?" And I said, "No, not lately. Been busy working." He says, "Well, I want you to know, I think you're a very, very good guy. You're very qualified. But I'm not going to recommend you for the job, even though you're probably the best person for the job." I said, "Well, that's crazy. If I'm the best person for the job." He said, "No, let me tell you why I'm not going to recommend you." He says, "I don't think you're ever going to be satisfied. You're always going to want a better job, a bigger job. And I think you'll come into this company and you'll do a good job for 2 years or 3 years and you leave. And this company's owned by this family. And I owe it to this family to get somebody that's going to stay longer. So I just want you to know, you're the best person for the job, but you're not getting the job." So within 2 weeks, three disasters. So I started with my counselor, and she started with my childhood and helped me understand that, why I was the way I was, and I was trying to basically make my father proud of me, etc. And that's why I was working so hard. And that's why that was the number 1 thing. And also how, I never, my family never talked, there was never any emotions or stuff in my family. I never recall my mother hugging me. Okay. I never recall my mother kissing me. There was just no emotions in my family. So I grew up not experiencing really human emotions in a family. I admired my father and I loved him and everything, but, I don't remember my father hugging me. All right. That was just the way it was. And that's not that it was then, but so she said, "I got to basically take you from a human working machine to a human being.
Mm.
And I got to teach you about emotions.
Wow.
And I got to help you find your emotions. I got to help you learn how to manage your emotions. And I got to help you manage how to express your emotions so you can relate to people in a positive emotional way. And so it took, I spent over a year, so many hours a week with that wonderful, wonderful human being. She was so patient with me, but she did her job. And all of a sudden, I became more, not perfect, not the best. I'm still working on it. Okay, and this was probably 33 years ago. I'm still working on it. I can always get better. But she basically brought emotions into it. And what was amazing, when I went back to work and I started asking the people to report to me, how's your family? Tell me what's going on. Oh, and I get children's names. And I said, well, how did Jane do on this? Or how did Billy do on this? All of a sudden, people that were working for me, because they felt like I cared about them as a human being, their performance went off the charts. All right? Performance went off the charts. I mean, I never yelled at anybody. I was always very honest and truthful, and I paid people well, but I never had conversations. All the meetings, I went through 20 years of the business world, and every conversation was, okay, what are you working on? What's working? What's not working? What can I do to help you? How can we do it faster, better, and cheaper? That was it. Okay? Not, how's the family? Where are you going on vacation? Is there anything I can do to help you? Now, I would send my people to school. I would give them raises. I would pay them well. But I didn't have any human connection. So the thing that basically I had to learn was, one, it's okay for a man to be emotional. It's okay to express emotions. And you better learn how to manage your emotions. I had another instance with my wife before all of this where we were differing on something, and I was getting, not obnoxious, but it was like I was getting frustrated with her. And I said something to her, and she says, time out. She says, do you realize that just because you feel something, you don't have to raise your voice, or you don't have to express it that way? Do you realize that there is not a link between your emotions and your behaviors that are automatic? And I looked at her and I says, are you telling me the truth? And she says, and she starts listing all her degrees, science degrees and everything, psychology. She asked, why would I lie to you? She said. I said, you mean when I feel something, I can stop it before I behave? I said, yeah, you can do that. I said, no one ever taught me that. She said, I just did. I want you to start doing it.
Wow. Wow.
So you asked for a story and you got lots more than you wanted, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be there sitting. You got to be there sitting and saying, this guy was really a whack job. This guy was really out of it. And the answer is, yeah, I was out of it in that one big domain, emotions. And what I've learned since then, and continually learn, especially in the last 20 years, is that emotions can be the most enabling thing of human happiness if they are managed and if you understand the power and you take ownership of what's going on inside of you.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing your story today. I think happiness is something that all of us are asking. Just a few days ago, Vivian and I went out to see a movie, Doctor Strange #2. I'm not sure if you went out and see it, but the movie ended with a question: are you happy? And it's just like, it's all that moment. I was like, okay, we all we all look for it. Even moving, that hit into the billion now is still, asking that question. And it's not an easy question to answer because, yeah, and. And like you say, sometimes, man, when you're asking a question, are you happy? You look at the person and say, "What's up?" Right? But
Yeah.
if is important for us to really share our emotions, and then when we share our real emotion, then you make the relational, the conversation a lot better, more related, right? Yeah, and it's fascinating to me, how everything from it when at the beginning of our conversation, things might not looking clear, but then so you constantly went out to the dark and the unknown looking for the answer out there, but then every time you went out you just put in one dots in there, and then now 40
Yes.
years 60 years later all the dots start to connect, and it's
Yeah.
build a very fruitful conversation, fruitful individual character and experience that allows you to bring a lot more meaningful things to this world. And I think that's why I really want to hear from you about the hyper learning. What is that leading
Yeah.
you to the hyper learning, so that we, the audience, Vivian and I, and we can share to the people that we know how we can adopt the mindset of hyper learning, though.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hyper learning is the word that I sort of created for my last book, which is how do we have meaningful work and meaningful relationships and a happy life in the digital age, which is here upon us, which is going to continually advance. The speed of digital advancement is going to be very, very fast. The best scientists say that the shelf life of knowledge will only be 2 to 3 years, because technology will be creating new knowledge so fast, and we human beings are not wired. All right, we were wired in ways for efficiency in assuming that things stayed the same, and so the ability to go in and to be highly adaptive and to learn at the speed of change requires, it requires mastery of self. It requires taking ownership of self. How you think, how you listen, how you collaborate, how you relate. All right, how you relate is engage with other human beings, and most of us weren't trained to do that. Schools don't teach that. But the good news is the great religions and the great philosophies of the world, and there's historically 7 great religions and philosophies. There's a multitude of them, Eastern and Western. The amazing thing is when you study all of them, they all come to the same conclusions. All right, they get there a different way. They may use different words, but it's the same. And it's this basically taking ownership of self. All right, and getting to the point where you achieve inner peace. Quiet ego, quiet mind, quiet body, positive emotions. You can generate positive emotions and you can manage negative emotions. And you embrace impermanence is the way. And so, and what that means for most of us as human beings is we have to basically release or we need a new story of what it means to be smart in the world. Being smart in the world, when I was growing up and until most recent times, is the person who knows the most is the smartest, right? The person who knows the most is the smartest. Well, and that's a very competitive game, all right? It can be a very competitive game. Well, guess what? No human being is going to be able to know more than a smart machine or a smart robot.
Yep.
Nobody. All right. And so all of a sudden, we got to redefine what smart is. And I did in my humility book was redefine smart and call it new smart. I'm defined not by what I know or how much I know, but by the quality of my thinking, listening, relating, and collaborating. All of a sudden, it's not how much or what, but it's how I'm thinking. Am I a good thinker? Can I learn to think in different ways? Okay. Do I make decisions? All right. And can I relate and connect to human beings emotionally? The second part of the new SMART model is my mental models, my story of the world. It's not reality. It's only my story. And your story is different. And your story, Vivian, is different. We will have three different stories. So what's important is to recognize that. Don't have our ego tied up in the story. I'm not my ideas. I'm not my story. Okay? And to be able to be open-minded and listen and try to understand your stories and to see if we're in the workplace, whether your concerns about what we're discussing in the workplace, whether we come to conclusions, yes, that's valid, this valid, and we end up with a better result, because I'm convinced in the work world going forward, the two key, if you will, skills are going to be emotionally connecting in positive ways with other human beings. Number two, being able to work with other people and have high quality, making meaning conversations. That the quality of the conversations in the workplace will determine the success. And by what do I mean by high quality, making meaning conversations? They're not competitive. It's not me versus you. Okay? It's me trying to understand. It's you trying to understand. It's our joint commitment to get the right answer. We're not competing against each other. All right? That we are a part of a team. And it's what's the best answer. We're not, and in order to do that, we got to learn how to truly listen to people. Most people, when they're listening to someone talking, most people, their mind is wandering about 50% of the time. And the other time, they're creating the answer in their mind. Or they have already got their answer and they're thinking about the next meeting. All right? Very few people truly, truly listen with their full being. Well, that's something that people have got to learn how to do. That's the quiet mind part. That's where meditation comes apart, etc. How do we have good conversations? Well, you're not going to have a good conversation for me unless you feel safe with me. Safe. That means you don't fear me. Okay? You don't fear being ridiculed by people. Right? You don't fear looking bad. We're all in this. We all right, have these issues, so to speak. And so you got to get to the point where people are more authentic, transparent, but that doesn't occur unless people feel safe. Okay? The concept of psychological safety. You look at all of the research that goes back decades about successful organizations. They all have the same attributes. And one of those attributes are successful organizations are places where the employees feel cared about and respected as a human being. Not just a cog in the wheel. That personally, and how do managers and leaders do that? By getting to know people. Okay? Getting to know people. Some of the best CEOs I've ever worked with. You know, give any example. The founder of Southwest Airlines in the United States, who's now passed away, Herb Keller. Herb was a client of mine and everything, and I'd spend time with him. And whenever I was there, and he did not have a big corner office with windows. He had an inner office. Other people got the good offices. We get through with our meeting, and he says, the first time I was there, he did this. He says, okay, I'll walk you down to the car. I says, no, I don't need that, Herb. I'll find the car. and I know where I'm going. Since I'm flying on your plane, okay, I'm fine. Just no, I'm going to walk you down. So he starts and he says, let's go down this floor. And you go down this floor. And he enters and he stops immediately and he talks to somebody by first name. And all of a sudden, people in the whole floor are getting up. And he goes down the floor, takes me with him. He knows everybody's name by the first name. He asks about children by asking, and he names the children's names.
Wow.
He asks about something. He asks about, is your mother feeling better? And people, men and women, this is platonic, no sexual stuff here. Platonic, men and women would come up and hug him. And we were leaving that floor, and I said, I've never seen that happen. And he looked at me and he says, what's the motto of my airline? I says, you're the Love Airline. I says, yes. Love Airline loves its people. And when their people feel loved, they will do everything possible to be a success and to help each other. And so he was saying this. And I've had other CEOs do that and show me when they do that. They said connecting and relating to people. And so that's where the world we live in is so very volatile, whether it's technology, whether it's global political issues, whether it's nuclear weapons, whether it's climate change. We're going to be living in a world that is just unlike anything that probably has happened for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Okay? And how people respond and react to that is going to be dependent upon what's going on inside of them and what's going on in the places they work, in the communities they live, in the countries they live. And the people that are going to succeed, the countries, the communities, the people, are the people that basically throw out the mindset of it's me against them, the people I'm working with, and that we are all one. Because by being one, we'll get to better answers. We will be able to keep our job. We will have a job.
Yep.
We will have a job. And so it's this whole new way of working that's got to take place in organizations. It's not going to be survival of the fittest. It's going to be survival of the others. Which teams are the best teams?
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and the wisdom that you accumulated over the works and your life of living and experience, and that is invaluable. I am really touched, and there's so much for a lot of us to reflect of where we actually been going and where next we are heading. And you're not got hit by the wall, you got smashed by the building, okay? and and I think got smashed by the building, but then you had the courage, and that is something that your father taught you well. Have the courage to make the mistakes, then have the courage to the courage to make corrections. And that is something that we all need to have, and we all need to have the courage. We all need to have the drive to do something better every day. And thanks, Ed, for demonstrating it. And not only demonstrate, you wrote about that so that you can share the wisdom to the millions, and you teach at the school so that your legacy can be carried on further. And we really admire of what you do. So thank you. I will have the last question for today, okay? Because we've been knowing a lot about you at the present, and then we want to know a little bit further you in the future. Okay, is there anything exciting that you are working on that you'd like to share with me, with Vivian, and the audience?
Well, the answer is yes. I've got something that I'm working on, as we speak, and I want to want to, the world I've reached, not the world, but the marketplace, I guess, that I've reached so far is generally people in business, all right? Because I taught in a business school and my publishers, and so I want to basically expand the audience. I want to work on taking these stories in ways to different audiences that from all walks of life, and from all ages. That it's a way to see if I can, and it requires different wording and different stories, etc. Because it's not business stories, etc. And so, yeah, what I'm working on, and I don't have it done, I don't have it figured out, but my goal is to take my work and to redo it in a way that instead of a 200 something page book with lots of stuff, I've got a different smaller book that invites people into the story in ways that's meaningful for them. All right. So that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do, is how to reach people who don't go to college. Okay, people that are good people. I mean, they're and who are not, who have the chance of not being employed going forward, and how to help those people get the skills that humans are going to need to learn those skills so that they will have meaningful work, meaningful relationships, etc. So that's what I'm on the beginning of trying to figure out. How do I sort of crack that big nut and do that? And it's there has to be a way, okay? Because we're all human beings. It's how to make it meaningful for them. It's and so I've got to basically transform in my own way. I've got to actually try to live in different shoes for a while to understand, okay, how I can basically connect.
Wow.
So that's what I'm working on.
Amazing. And you know what? The best gift is to get to the unknown and get the answer. So you will crack the nuts and then you will make it happen. Along the line, if anything that Vivian and I can support, can help or anything, please let us know. I just got taught by one of the executive coach a few hours ago that we be part of the game. I'll offer volunteer help. If anything that we can support, you let us know, and we will devote our time to do that.
Thank you. You're most kind. You're most kind.
Thank you very much.
I thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you. I applaud you. I applaud you for what you are doing and the reaching out to people and how you're helping people and how you keep it going. It's inspirational hearing you. I mean, you give me energy. You got this, oh man, it's all psyched up again, ready to go. I mean, seeing this, what you're doing is so important. And so I wish you all the best. If there's anything I can ever do, please reach out, and be well, do well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Your kind words also give a great energy for Vivian and I to continue our path and continue to go into the unknown and following you to get to get the result that we would want to bring to the people around us. So thank you so much for joining and sharing your story with me, and then for all the wisdom that you brought out and share with our audience today. We appreciate it a lot.
Good. Thank you so much.
We wish you all the best,
We wish
Professor
you all-
Ed. Take care and have a beautiful day. Yes.
Same to you. Same to both of you. Y'all are wonderful human beings.
Thank you very much.
Keep being. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, Vivian.